Local history, local culture, local events, your community. This is the Joe Kelly Show.
And welcome to the show, everybody. Thanks for joining us. John Zogby is our guest. John, of course, the national pollster. He's made his reputation in polling over the years. He's out with a new book, and we're going to be talking about his book. We're going to be talking about an appearance he's making at the Oneida County History Center this Wednesday about a documentary that's going to be debuting up there. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about polling. But before we do any of that, we're going to say welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, old friend.
Yeah, it's been a long time, too long. How long have you been involved with polling?
September 1984, 40 years.
Oh, geez. How did you get into it?
Well, you know, I ran for mayor. You may be one of the last people that knows that I ran for mayor.
I remember quite well.
Yeah, in 1981, and I was teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I was running against Mayor Paulinga and future Mayor LaPola.
Yeah.
I was the third guy.
Yeah.
And the truth is, with a group of former and current students, we did a poll. And honestly, I found out exactly how much I was going to lose by. And I thought, hey, this is pretty good. So I went to work for a national group, an Arab American group, and I met people all over the country. I was the chief organizer. And basically, when I left that group, I started a consulting firm. And the one thing I did, now we're talking 1984, it wasn't as widespread as it is today. I did polling, local polling, and then grew it from there. The
thing that amazed, I was thinking about that just this morning. Every time you turn on TV or the radio or look in the newspaper, they've got a different poll.
Yeah.
There are polls everywhere. All right, that's understood. But what I don't understand, John, is they're all coming in with different results.
Yeah.
How could so many professional pollsters come back with so many different results?
Well, for starters, you're going to get 1, 2, 3 points differences by the very fact that you're doing sampling. And in effect, 1, 2, 3 point differences are all saying the same thing. Secondly, in a close race, that could mean a Kamala Harris up 2 or a Donald Trump up 2, still saying the same thing. It's a close race. But the key thing, I think, is that, and this is the part of the business that's artwork, not just simply science, is that when we collect our sample, we have to approximate what the turnout model on election day is going to look like. And so we may have too few blacks on our sample, or too few young people, or too many women as opposed to men, and we apply weights to adjust those based on history, you know, what turnouts look like. And so different pollsters may use different turnout models.
So that's where it is in the model.
It's in the model, yeah.
And I remember you had the model correct one year. In fact, I think this made your national reputation, was the year that you called the presidential race very correctly, and Rush Limbaugh fell in love with you.
Yeah.
What year was that?
96.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how close were you on that? I forget.
0.1%.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Did, am I correct, did that make your national reputation?
It certainly did, yeah. And I was polling for Reuters, you know, and Reuters is worldwide. And so there was one person in the Vatican reading my poll. I always wondered if it was the big red hat, you know. But yeah, worldwide reputation.
Yeah, did you ever have a chance to meet him? Rush Limbaugh?
No, we talked on the phone a few times. I, in fact, did some polling for him. But the first time he called me was before the election. So it was June. I had Bill Clinton leading Bob Dole by 5, 6 percentage points. Everybody else had Clinton leading by 13, 14, 15. This is a true story. Rosemary, who was my longtime assistant, came into my office and she said, I have Rush Limbaugh on the phone. Now, I had heard that he liked my polling. So anyway, I get on the phone. I said, hello. He said, Mr. Zogby? He said, my name is Rush Limbaugh. I have a radio show. He was very unpretentious, very serious. And I said, before we get started, you need to know that I'm a liberal Democrat. He said, oh, your polls are honest then. I said, yeah. He said, I like that. And Joe, I couldn't possibly have ever afforded I don't think anybody could, the free publicity that I got from Rush Limbaugh for years. Now, when he didn't like the results, oh boy, did he trash my polling. But yeah, this was a liberal Democrat, but I was ensuring, like other pollsters were not, that there was a correct number of Republicans in the sample. And the other pollsters weren't doing that.
It has to be so much easier, I would guess, today to poll than with the technology that we have versus when you first started, yes? No?
Well, yeah. When I first started, it was very easy because 96% had landlines. And culturally, we answered our telephone. And of those who answered the telephone, 65% said, oh yeah, I'll be happy to do a survey. Then we saw response rates plummet. They're answering machines, people working, two-income households, nobody's home, people working strange shifts. And then, the advent of selling MasterCards and MCI telephone and clutter. So the response rates really plummeted. But yeah, we were one of the pioneers in doing online polls by email. And I was so glad we did that and did our early research on it, because now, yeah, it's much easier than it is by telephone.
Now, are you retired from polling?
No. I'm still working. As my father would say, he had a grocery store. I'm only working half a day, 12 hours. So, but my son Jeremy is the managing partner. He's running the show.
And where was your father's store?
Oneida and Grant Street, Zogby Brothers. And in fact, their garage became the initial home of Simeon's.
Yes, I know right where it was.
And the Phoenician.
Okay, I know right where it was. Very successful spot. John Zogby is our guest. We're talking about his new book. When we come back, we'll talk more about the book and how you can get it. Short break, right back. And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. John Zogby is our guest. He's out with a new book. And this is not your first book. Fourth. And this is Beyond the Horse Race, How to Read Polls and Why We Should. Why should we read polls?
Because they give us a snapshot of a moment in time and ground us, let us know where we are, politically. But also, polls are important because they connect us. So I'm driving my car, or I'm sitting at work, or I'm working at home in my pajamas, and I have opinions, but where do I fit? Are my opinions in the majority or the minority? Am I way out? Polls give us an accurate reading of who we are and how we connect to other people.
Can polls also drive the way public opinion goes? In other words, if people are out there hearing that Donald Trump is way ahead of Harris or vice versa, can that shape the outcome?
It's not a common thing. So yeah, sure, let's say in the early days, if folks on the ground, the strategists and so on, oftentimes don't really even need a poll to know, oh, we're behind. There isn't enough support, or we're going to win this in a landslide. The value of public polls is it either validates that or it negates it. But it gives folks a public reading of where the race stands. Now, sure, Richard Nixon is leading George McGovern by 20 percentage points. That's not good news for McGovern, and that can dampen turnout. Why even bother turning out? Or in this case, we know it's very, very close. And so we know that contrary to what some folks like to believe, your vote's really going to count this year.
And this is, when you talk about a narrow race, and this, you're saying this is going to be narrow, yes?
It is narrow right now. Maybe it'll break towards the end, but we're not seeing any evidence of that right now. It's
and
close.
how close is close?
So on average, Kamala Harris leads by about 2 percentage points nationally. In more recent polls, it's been 3 or 4 percentage points. However, the Democrat in the race, because of the way the Electoral College is, gets a lot of excess votes in California and New York and Illinois. So she really needs to be leading by 3.5 points to be, able to look at a potential Electoral College victory. In the battleground states, they say Donald Trump leads in 4 to 6 of the 7 battleground states this week. But those are 0.3, 0.5, 1.5 is the biggest lead that he has. So it's that close nationally and in the battlegrounds.
Did she make a mistake? I was just reading about the L. Smith. I've always been interested in the L. Smith dinner in New York City.
Yeah, me too.
Raises a lot of money for Catholic charities. But you get such wit out of that dinner every year. Did she make a mistake not showing up for it?
From a public relations standpoint, yes. From the standpoint of, was it going to earn her more votes? No. She's got New York, New York City big, and she was in Wisconsin, and frankly, it was probably better to be in Wisconsin. Plus, Cardinal Dolan, as you know, is very, very close. He's buds with Donald Trump, and so I think she sensed that that was hostile territory.
Donald Trump made mention the other day, John, that he thought New York State was in play.
I think there was a moment in time when Biden was in the race that New York State was in play. It isn't now. There's a substantial lead, maybe not as large a lead that Harris has than previous Democrats in previous elections. But then we also have very competitive House races, and that may drive some Democratic turnout. We have 3 districts, in fact, the 17th along the Hudson, the 19th, very strange, from Dutchess County to Tompkins County. That's
that was gerrymandered a long time ago.
Gerrymandered, yeah. And then we have our own
22nd.
22nd. These are close races, and frankly, the odds makers, those are 3 Republican seats. Odds makers are suggesting that, as of today anyway, Democrats look pretty good to win back those 3.
Now, there was an article in the New York Post a couple days ago. The Speaker of the House was saying that the opposite.
Yeah.
He thinks they can, he's a Republican, of course, he thinks they can win all 3 of those seats.
They could.
Yeah.
These are, look, these are razor thin races. They were razor thin, and they are today. Each of the polls that I have seen have the Democrat again leading by 1 or 2 percentage points. In this district, I did see a poll where Mannion was leading by 7 points. That was a few weeks ago.
Pretty big.
That's pretty big if it holds.
Yeah.
And now you've got a lot of negative advertising, not indigenous here. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah. The book sells for how much?
It's $30 at the bookstore. From the publisher, it's $18.
How do they get it from the publisher?
Rowman, R-O-W-M-A-N, and Littlefield. They go right there, and they're go online, and you can either click or call an 800 number.
And you're also doing a documentary, or well, you're going to be a part of it. The documentary is about you, this is going to, it debuted the other day, but is there going to be another showing this Wednesday?
Wednesday, right, at 7 o'clock. Dennis Dewey, who's well known to a lot of people. Dennis approached me wanting to do a life story, which, you know, is a little daunting, especially when it's your life.
Yeah.
And he's a remarkable talent.
Yeah.
He's a wonderful guy, but he's a genuine Renaissance man. And his work, I've seen Mr. Dickens Comes to Utica and the work that he did about dairy farming locally. Dennis does work along the lines of Ken Burns, you know, with still photographs and narration.
And I've seen his work up at the United County History Center, which has been excellent. And that's where it's going to be shown this Wednesday. You're going to be there?
I'm going to be there, sure.
Yeah. And do you know, is there a charge for that?
I think I saw $5.
Okay. And so the public's invited, and it'll be, how long? Do you know, John?
Hour and 10 minutes.
Okay, good. Well, that could be another time we'll see each other this Wednesday up at the County History Center.
I hope you do.
Yeah. We're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll talk more with John Zogby. Short break, right back. And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. John Zogby is our guest. John is out with his fourth book, Beyond the Horse Race, and it talks about polls, how to read polls, and why we should, why polls should matter to us. The polling that takes place now, you hear about the ABC poll, or you hear about the Wall Street Journal poll, but then you hear about internal polls. What are these internal polls all about?
Well, the internal polls are private, proprietary, and what they're meant to do is help plot strategy and to plan a campaign, to test what's working, what isn't working, what the candidate's image should be. If a candidate took a position this way or that, would it make you more likely or less likely to vote for the candidate? It gets down into granularity, and the rule, kind of the ethics in the business, is that if you release part of a poll, then an enterprising reporter has the right to go to you and say, I want to see the rest of the poll. That's why there's always just a little bit of buzz about private polls, but strategists, campaign managers, and candidates don't like to release the whole poll, because then you've got to see the dirty insides of it.
Didn't Bill Clinton use polls a lot in terms of his how he was going to do things and what he was going to do and not do?
Yeah, yes, and not only Bill Clinton, but everybody does. You know, I mean, frankly, the cliche is, the only poll that counts is the one on election day. No, it's the one that I get in my hands at 7 o'clock every morning and read and study and then yell about if I'm behind.
Do they get them every day?
Pretty much, yeah. On a national campaign, they will be polling nationwide. They'll be polling groups like younger voters or independents. They'll be polling states. They will be polling segments of the population. Macomb County was always famous outside of Detroit. That was where Democrats, conservative Democrats, became Reagan Democrats, and ever since that's been kind of a bellwether for Michigan. Michigan has always been a bellwether for the country. So they polled a lot in Macomb County.
What about Oneida County? Do we do a lot of polling in Oneida County? Do the politicians here do a lot of polling?
No, not so much. They do some. They go the least expensive route that they can, which you know, those robo phone calls. We've done some. We've done some here in Oneida County, but my living has come from
outside.
Outside.
Do you ever do any foreign polling?
195 countries.
Really?
As of this year. It was 80 countries when I sold my company in 2010, but then we just did a massive, earlier this year, poll for the General Secretary's Office of the United Nations. It was a poll on women and their priorities, and so Suriname, we did lots of little places.
I guess people like me just think about polling in terms of elections, but you forget there's these other topics that people want to know.
There are. We do a lot of corporate, a lot of NGO, not-for-profits, globally, nationally, and we've done local community foundations and United Ways and
what would a United Way or a community foundation, what would they want to know about?
Community priorities, you know, and also trying to find out what's out there that they don't know about, that we don't know about, what's sort of under the radar screen. That's where then you do a combination of talking to influencers, caregivers, you know, people, teachers, people who are on the ground and what they're seeing daily that may not be filtering through, you know, via other channels.
Would I be right or wrong in assuming that the two big topics, issues, I guess is a better word, in the current presidential campaign are the economy and immigration?
They are. Nationwide, they are the top two issues. For young women, reproductive rights is the #1 issue. Gaza is the #3 issue. And I mention that because Kamala Harris needs young women in order to win. That's what put Barack Obama over the top in 2012 against Romney. And she also needs progressive Democrats, and that's where on the issue of Gaza, she's coming up a little short. So what you're seeing among her, she leads big among younger women voters, but there's still 10 or 12% of that segment who are undecided. And so she actually, if they're undecided, they may not vote. And so she needs to make sure she brings them home. Donald Trump, on the other hand, clearly needs young men and needs young black men in particular, because that gives him a crossover, an edge.
There's been a lot of talk about Trump and young black men recently in the news, and apparently he recognizes that.
He does. I've had him as high as 32% among young black men. He has settled down into the low to mid 20s percentile among young black men, which is a real overperformance. If he can get them out to vote, there's an alienation there. There's an anger. There's a quandary as to, and this is young men and young black men talking, not me. But how do I be a male in what I perceive as a society that focuses a lot on women? Meanwhile, young women are saying, we're making progress in the workplace. By the same token, how do we control our bodies and keep that away from state legislation?
We've only got about 30 seconds left, but is there another book in the works for John Zogby?
I actually have another manuscript. Yeah, I do, and I'll see.
All right.
I'll see if it's going to see the light of day.
And remind everybody how they can get this from a bookstore.
Yep, it's at Barnes & Noble. It's at the Phoenician restaurant, and it's certainly on Amazon, Barnes & Noble online, and Roman and Littlefield.
And Roman and Littlefield costs how much, John?
30.
30. And Is it at the United County History Center?
It will be.
Okay.
It was this past Saturday, and it will be on Wednesday.
And will you do some signing if anybody?
This never leaves.
All right. Good luck with the book. Continued success.
Always good to talk to you.
Always good talking to you. That's going to do it for us this week. We'll be back next week. We'll do it all again. Don't forget cnyhomepage.com. There's a lot of good stuff there. Until next time, take care of yourself, everybody.